Welcome, aspirants. Today we're going to tackle a topic that's absolutely fundamental for your exams, not to mention for understanding how the world works, and that topic is economic growth. We're going to break it all down, piece by piece, so you can build that perfect answer.
All right, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the basic what and why. Then we'll take a look at the global picture, dive deep into what actually drives growth, and wrap it all up with the key takeaways and the limitations that you absolutely need to know for your exams. So let's get right into it.
You know, this quote from James Tobin just nails it. At its core, economic growth is really all about a choice we're constantly making, a choice between the present and the future. It's this trade-off. Do we consume things today, or do we invest so we can have a more prosperous tomorrow? It's a tension that you'll see pop up over and over again.
Okay, first things first. What exactly is economic growth? We have to get this definition right because everything else we talk about is built on this foundation, so let's lock it in.
Now, the key word you have to remember here is sustained. This isn't about some temporary boom, a one-off spike in production. No, real economic growth is a long-term, consistent expansion of an economy's output. That distinction is absolutely crucial.
I love this analogy. It's just a fantastic way to think about this. Growth isn't just about more cooking, throwing more raw materials into the pot. It really comes from better recipes, finding smarter, more efficient, more innovative ways to use the resources we already have. That's where the magic happens.
For your exams, it is vital to know the difference between these two. Extensive growth just means the whole economic pie is getting bigger. But intensive growth, well, that's what really changes people's lives. It means each person's slice of that pie is getting bigger, and that's how we actually measure a rising standard of living. All right, let's clear up a classic point of confusion. And honestly, it's a favorite topic for examiners. What is the difference between economic growth and economic development? They're definitely related, but trust me, they are not the same thing.
Here's the easiest way to remember this. Growth is quantitative. It's about the numbers, about getting bigger. Development, on the other hand, is qualitative. It's about getting better and fairer. Getting this right in your answer shows a much, much deeper level of understanding.
So that's the theory, but what's been happening in the real world? Well, the story of global economic growth over the last couple of centuries has been a story of incredible progress, for sure, but also of massive divergence.
I mean, just look at this number. It is absolutely staggering. A couple of centuries ago, the prosperity gap between the richest and the poorest nations was pretty small, maybe a factor of 2. Today, that gap has exploded to around 300 times. This is what economists call the Great Divergence.
This table here gives us a snapshot of a really pivotal decade, the 1990s. And you can see the incredible dynamism of Asian economies. China was posting over 10% average annual growth. India, a very strong 6%. And then you look at a major economy like Russia, which actually shrank during this period. What a contrast.
And this chart just puts that data into perspective so clearly. You can just see the phenomenal pace set by China, right? And India's growth rate was also way ahead of an established economy like the US. This was really a decade of major economic catch-up.
Now, zooming in on India's own journey, the long-term transformation is undeniable. Between 1950 and the early 2000s, the total size of our economy grew tenfold. But even more importantly, GDP per person more than tripled. That signals a massive improvement in prosperity for the average citizen.
So we've seen all these numbers, but why do we care so much? Why is growth so important? What are the real, tangible benefits that make it such a central goal for pretty much every government on the planet? Let's break that down.
At its heart, growth creates opportunity. You see, when the economic pie gets bigger, it's just easier to resolve social fights over who gets what slice. And maybe most importantly, sustained growth is the single most powerful weapon we have for lifting people out of poverty. You might have heard this called the trickle-down effect.
Okay, so if growth is the engine, what's the fuel? Let's get into the core mechanics, the key sources that actually drive economic progress. Pay close attention here, because this section is crucial for your exams.
This is a fundamental question, a real cornerstone of economics, and the answer can be broken down into 3 essential pillars.
And here they are, those 3 pillars. First up is investment, and that means both physical capital, like factories and roads, and human capital, like education and skills. Second, technology, finding those better recipes we talked about. And third, having sound policies and institutions that create an environment where the first 2 can really thrive.
Now to make this super easy to remember, just think of the word TIP. T for technology, I for investment, and P for policy. These are the 3 essential tips for driving growth. Use this framework to structure your exam answers and you'll be golden.
Let's define a key piece of jargon here: capital formation. It sounds complicated, but it's just the official name for building up a country's stock of productive tools. The machines, the buildings, the infrastructure. This is the investment part of our TIP mnemonic, and it's a must-know concept.
And here's another one, the capital output ratio. The easiest way to think about this is as a measure of investment efficiency. A lower ratio is better. It means you're getting more bang for your buck. So for example, a ratio of 3 means you need to invest 3 rupees in capital just to generate 1 rupee of output each year.
And finally, let's bring this all home. Look, a top-scoring answer doesn't just sing the praises of growth, it also understands the negatives. So let's look at the limitations to give you that balanced, well-rounded view.
It is so important to remember that growth is not a perfect solution. It's not a panacea. It can actually make inequality worse, it can lead to massive environmental damage like pollution, and it can chew through our non-renewable resources. Acknowledging these trade-offs, that's the sign of a really sophisticated understanding.
And here it is, your ultimate revision slide. It's got all the core concepts, all the key jargon we've covered. If you master this slide, you will have a solid grip on economic growth. But it leaves us with one final critical question for India's future, doesn't it? How do we chase after the incredible benefits of growth, while at the same time managing and minimizing its very real and sometimes very painful costs? Well, that's the challenge for the next generation of leaders and policymakers, people like you.